Welcome to the Healthy, Wealthy, and Smart podcast. Each week, we interview the best and brightest in physical therapy, wellness, and entrepreneurship. We give you cutting-edge information you need to live your best life, healthy, wealthy, and smart. The information in this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and should not be used as personalized medical advice. And now, here's your host, Dr. Karen Litzy.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Karen Litzy, and today's episode is brought to you by Net Health. Net Health's outpatient EMR and billing software, Redoc, powered by XFIT, provides an all-in-one software solution with guided documentation workflows to make it easy for therapists to use and streamline billing processes to help speed billing and improve reimbursement. You can check out 4 ways that outpatient physical therapy providers can increase patient engagement in 2020 at go.nethealth.com/patient engagement 2020. Okay, on to today's episode. I am so happy to be joined by Daniel Chelette, Justin Zych, and Amy Arundale in today's episode. We are continuing the talk that we gave at CSM, which seems like a world away, back in February in Denver, Colorado, and it was titled Turning the Road to Success into a Highway, Strategies to Facilitate Success for Young Professionals. And so we were basically helping young professionals and students give a roadmap to their career. And we had so many questions in our queue afterwards, we couldn't get to them all, so we thought we'd do it here on today's podcast. So in this episode, we discuss how work-life balance evolves in your career, the physical therapy awareness crisis, how to tackle the female leadership disparity in physical therapy, and burnout and when to pivot in your career, and so much more. So I want to thank Justin, Daniel, and Amy for all coming back together and recording this podcast. And if you were at CSM and we didn't get to your question, hopefully we're answering it now. And if you weren't there, then you get a taste of a little bit of what we spoke about. And you can find all of our Twitter handles at podcast.healthywealthysmart.com in the show notes. So if you have any questions, that's the best way to get to us. And also from a podcast host point of view, if you like what you're hearing, definitely refer to your friends and family and your colleagues. And we would also love if you leave us a review at Apple Podcasts. So everyone, thanks so much and enjoy.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. I'm happy to have each of you on. And I'm going to have you introduce yourself in a second. But just for the listeners, the 4 of us were part of a presentation at CSM, the Combined Sections meeting through the American Physical Therapy Association in Denver a couple of weeks ago. And our talk was creating a roadmap for your physical therapy career. And afterwards, we had a Q&A, and we just had so many questions that we just physically couldn't get to them due to time constraints and the such at CSM. So we thought we would record this podcast for the people who were there and the people who weren't there to answer the rest of the questions that were in our Slido queue, because I think we had quite a bit of questions. So, but before we do that, guys, I'm just going to shoot to you and have all of you give a quick bio, tell us who you are, what you do, what you're up to, and then we'll get to all of those questions. So Justin, I'll have you start.
Sure. So I'm Justin Zych. I'm currently with Emory University. I am teaching in an adjunct role with the DPT program and then also the Orthopedic Residency. I went through and did a orthopedic residency and manual therapy fellowship through Brooks Rehab in Jacksonville, and did my PT education with Duke University.
Nice. And Daniel, go ahead.
Hey everybody, my name is Daniel Chelette. I also graduated alongside Justin from Duke in 2015, and also completed an orthopedic residency at The Ohio State University, and then stayed on and completed a fellowship in orthopedic manual therapy at Ohio State as well. And then worked in an outpatient orthopedic clinic for a couple of years, and then was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to join on and work as a physical therapist in the Player Performance Center with the PGA Tour. So I've actually about two months into that. And it's been a pretty cool experience. So that's where we're at right now.
Great. And Amy, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I'm Amy Arundale. I'm a physical therapist and biomechanist with the Brooklyn Nets. I also went to Duke, although a few years before Dan and Justin, and then worked in North Carolina for a little while as a sports physical therapist, as well as working with a large youth soccer club before going and doing a PhD at the University of Delaware under Lynn Snyder Mackler. So did research on primary and secondary ACL injury prevention. Did a postdoc in Sweden with Johanna Kvist and Martin Hagland before moving here to Brooklyn.
Great. All right. Well, thank you all for joining me and allowing the listeners to get a little bit of a glimpse into our CSM talk for those who weren't there, and for those who were and maybe we didn't answer their question while we were there, we can answer it right now. So Daniel, I'm going to throw it to you. I'm going to have you take the lead for the remainder here. So take it away.
Let's do it. All right. So just a quick little background of the foundation or basis for this talk. It really focuses on some lessons and things that we have learned through the four of our unique experiences up until this point about professional growth and professional development, and things we've learned the easy way and things we've learned the not so easy way, and just tidbits of wisdom we've picked up along the way. And we thought it'd be valuable to put it together and have a talk for CSM, and that's kind of what the basis of all this was. So towards the last portion of the talk, we just opened up wide open Q&A, and we got through a few questions, but we've got a handful more that we're going to go with. So we're going to start out with let's see, what do you recommend for the future PT that wants to get involved in a specific section of PT but wants to remain local to their community?
I can start with that one.
Yeah.
I think one of the nice things about being involved in the sections is a lot of times they actually are based where you're at. So they may require going to conferences, but they sometimes don't even require that. So it's really easy actually to stay local and still contribute and get involved in the sections. Really the big piece there is just reaching out and saying, hey, I'm really interested in getting involved. How can I volunteer? And that might be, helping with membership, which might be making phone calls or emails or following up with people who have maybe accidentally dropped their section or their APTA membership. It might be helping with various other projects, but a lot of times those are actually, maybe they're internet based or they're going to be through conference calls. So it's pretty easy to stay local.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. I'm pretty involved in the private practice section of the APTA, and I would echo what Amy said. You can get involved in committees. So a lot of the sections have individual committees, and most of that work is done online with maybe you have to go to the annual meeting of that section, but that's just once a year. And the good news is if you're doing a lot of things online, you're meeting people when you go to, let's say, the section meetings each year, you'll get to know people in your immediate local area. And it's a great way to start making and nurturing those connections and those relationships. So then you'll have people in your immediate area that you can go to for guidance and just to hang out and have fun as well. But I think starting, like Amy said, just have to ask.
Yeah, and I think kind of the beauty of the age that we live in is that it's really easy to connect via long distance. So technology allows us to do that. And I'm a part of a committee through the American Academy of Orthopedic Manual Physical Therapists. It's the membership committee, and everybody's all over the place. We're all across the country, and that was just something I got plugged into, and I've met a lot of cool people through it and have made some connections within that realm via that. So there's a lot of different online and long distance ways that you can get connected without physically being connected, which is helpful if there's a particular area you want to stay in, but you still want to get connected to people within your community, but also outside of it.
All right, Daniel, go ahead. Take it away.
All right. We're stepping it up here with this next one. This is a good metaphysical question. Do you compartmentalize your life? How do you approach the interaction between family and professional domains?
So, yeah, that is a really deep question. I'll try to go through and answer to the best of my ability. I think that intersects a little bit with my section of the talk, which really focused on trying to make sure that you could handle all of the new responsibilities that come with being a new physical therapist, getting used to the responsibilities and productivity expectations, but while also at the same time understanding that it's important to have a balance outside of the clinic and a really good work-life balance. So as far as compartmentalizing it, I don't know if I've specifically sat down and tried to put things into boxes. I do have a little bit of a blend. I mean, even my wife works for a different physical therapy company, so we share a little bit of a shared language with that. But it's important that whether it's documentation or other things, when I leave the clinic, I try to leave and make sure that I have a little bit of time for me and time to focus on whether that's my own professional development, doing and taking advantage of opportunities like this to meet and talk with other people, or just relax and kind of step away from the responsibilities that you go through throughout the day. So that's a great question, but I think you're going to find a bunch of individual answers from it.
Yeah, I think it's an individual question, kind of like Justin mentioned. And I think for me, what I found is, maybe work-life balance, or particularly going through residency and a fellowship, work-life balance, a 50-50 split, maybe not completely realistic. It's a work-life division. So where you have things within your life, be it relationships or activities or whatever, where you're able to unplug a little bit from work. And those might be bigger parts of your life at different points in your life. But it's being able to, nurture and engage in all aspects of who you are as a person, and not just work, but kind of be guided by what you're passionate about, what's important in your life. And those will take up bigger sections of your life pie at different points in your life. So it's just important to try to have a division, but not necessarily think that you have to keep that division at a certain level at all times throughout your life, because life changes.
So my old advisor, Lynn Mackler, and I've also heard Sharon Dunn use the metaphor of juggling. And they talk about juggling rubber balls and crystal balls. So your crystal balls being the things that are like really, really important, the things that you have to keep in the air, because if you drop, they shatter. So those might be like family. They might be important relationships. They might be work. And then you also have rubber balls. So rubber balls would be then things that if you drop, they'll bounce back. They're not quite as crucial to keep in the air at all times. And that balance between some of those rubber balls and crystal balls is always going to change. But that there are some things that you have to keep in the air, and some things that you can let drop, or they might have a different kind of juggling cycle than others. So yeah, I think it changes from time to time. I've had periods of time where I've basically just worked full time. My postdoc was a great example. I was basically, going to work during the day, working on postdoc stuff, and then coming home and trying to finish off revisions on my PhD papers. And I was in a long distance relationship at the time, so it kind of just worked that I was literally working, 14, sometimes 14, 16 hours a day. That's not sustainable for a long period of time though. And I'm guilty of sometimes not being good at that balance. I would like to think as I've gotten older, I'm better at creating time where I'm not working, or, actually taking vacations where I'm putting an email, like vacation email reminder on, and not looking at emails. But it's going to change from time to time, and those priorities will change as your life changes. So I don't know if it's necessarily compartmentalizing, but prioritizing what needs to be what are those crystal balls and what are those rubber balls?
Okay, you guys, they were all three great answers, and I really don't think I have much to add. What I will say is that as you get older, since I'm definitely the oldest one of this bunch, as you get older, it does get easier because you start to realize the things that drive your happiness and the things that don't. And as you get older, you really want to make, like, one of my crystal balls, which I love, by the way. Sharon Dunn is genius, obviously. Um, but for me, one of my crystal balls, I'm going to use that, is happiness. And so within that crystal ball, what really makes me happy? And that's something that I keep up in the air at all times. And at times, maybe it is work, maybe it's not, maybe it's my relationship, maybe it's my family or my friends, or it's just me sitting around and binging on Netflix. But what happens when you get older is, I think, yeah, I agree. I don't know. And I think we've all echoed this, that I don't think you compartmentalize. You just really start to realize what's the most meaningful things for you right now. And it's fluid and changes sometimes day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year.
All right. And one quick thing on that last question, kind of a hot topic, particularly in the medical doctor community, is burnout and resiliency. You'll see those terms thrown around a lot. And I think a big thing is to realize that those types of things, as far as burnout and kind of getting to a point where you're just sort of worn out with with the PT profession, what you do on a daily basis. Everybody's susceptible to it. You know, we can all get caught in this idea that maybe we're indestructible, or, you know, oh, I can take on as much as I want to or need to. Like, I'm a machine, X, Y, and Z. At a certain point, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And you have to, sort of like Karen and Amy alluded to, that prioritization is huge. It definitely gets a little bit easier as you gain more life experience and kind of see what matters and maybe what doesn't so much. Okay, another kind of good, solid question here. So I'm going to paraphrase a little bit. So companies, businesses usually do something really specific. They offer a specific product or a service or something like that. They focus on one thing. In PT, we do many things. Is there an identity crisis within the profession of physical therapy? And how do we address it? So I'll kind of get the ball rolling. That's a heavy question. I think to a certain degree, I don't know if I would say crisis, but I do think at times, like, I use the situation of, if somebody asks me what physical therapy is, initially I have a little bit of a hard time describing it. I think the mission statement of the Vision 2020 is sort of what I fall back to. It's a really good snapshot of how we can describe what we do. It's basically helping to optimize and maximize the human experience through movement and overall health. And but that in itself is a little bit vague and a big picture, and sort of hard to really put specific meat to. So, yeah, I think to a certain degree, it's a little bit hard to say what is physical therapy's identity. What do you guys think?
I would say, I don't know if we have an identity crisis, but I think we have an awareness crisis. I think the general public's knowledge and awareness of physical therapy, and then also within the medical profession, the awareness and knowledge of what physical therapy is, I think is a massive problem, because that knowledge and awareness isn't there. And probably part of it then comes from us. I think, Dan, what you're saying, I think that is that kind of, if we can't describe ourselves, then no wonder other people can't figure out what we do or how we do it. So I'll give a shout out actually to Tracy Blake, who's a physical therapist and a researcher in Canada. And one of the things that the last time we sat down and had a chat was, she kind of gave me this challenge, was if someone were to walk up to you and ask you what you do, come up with a way to describe what you do without using any medical terminology. So without using movement, without using sports, without using some of our fallback terminology, like come up with that elevator pitch of this is what I do. So if you've got that at the ready, if you understand that, if you can kind of at the drop of a dime give that 5-second spiel about what physical therapy is, then suddenly that person knows. But we've all got to have that at the ready, and we've all got to be able to do that so that we can put it in a common language that your next door neighbor can understand, that your grandmother can understand. So when they come to you and say, my hip's been bothering me for 6 weeks and I've been going to a chiropractor, you've got that language to be able to say, well, have you thought about physical therapy? When you're talking to a doctor in a hospital, or even just in normal conversation, you've got that ability to say, well, hey, what about PT? Let's not put them on an opioid. Let's get them into physical therapy. So I think it's really a big awareness crisis.
Okay, so Amy, then my challenge to you is, to Tracy's point, how do you answer that question? And then I have an even bigger challenge that I'll say to everyone, but how do you answer that question?
So I've written it down. Let's see if I can get it right. The short version of mine is that my goal is to help athletes at all levels develop into their optimal athletic being, as well as develop their optimal performance.
Okay. Not bad. Not bad. What if someone says, well, what do you mean by optimal?
That's a good question.
I don't get that. What does that mean exactly?
How do I help you become the best you can be?
Excellent. Very nice. Very nice. So now I have a challenge for the three of you. And let's see, Daniel we'll start with Justin. Let's put him on the spot first. No? Well, okay, let's put him on the spot first. Great. All right. So I was at a entrepreneurial meetup a couple of years ago. And the person who was running this, gosh, I can't remember his name now. Isn't that terrible? But he said, I want everyone to stand up. And in 5 words, so you have 5 fingers, right? Most of us. So in 5 words, explain to me what you do. So talk about stripping it down to its barest essentials, simplifying to the point of maybe absurdity. It's hard to say what you do in 5 words, but Daniel, I'll start with you. So someone comes up to you and you say, I'm a physical therapist. 5 words. This is what I do.
Help people live life freely.
Okay, that's not bad. Not bad. Justin?
I'm not going to use a sentence, but facilitate, educate. Yeah, facilitate, educate, empower. Does that count that I repeated them? Am I at like 6 now? Restore, empathize. Throw empathize in there.
Okay. All right. Amy, 5 words.
I like Justin's, but I'm going to go with, I think I'm at 6 actually.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Help people move better without pain.
Nice. Yeah. When I did this for this little meetup, I said, I help people move better. That's what I said. Those were the 5 words. I help people move better. But I do like where I think maybe if we put our heads together and we mashed up all 4 of ours, I think we'd come up with a really, really nice identity statement that is maybe 10 words. So maybe we can put our heads together after this and come up with a nice identity statement made up of 10 words. And if we were at CSM, we would have the audience do this. This would have been one of their action items. So what I'd be curious is for the people listening to this, put an action item, what are your 5 words? What would you do to describe what physical therapy is? And then if you're on Twitter, just tag one of us. You can find all of our Twitter handles at the podcast at podcast.healthywealthysmart.com in the show notes here. So tag one of us and let us know what your 5 words are, because I'd be really curious to know that. Excellent. All right, Daniel, where are we at? What's next?
So actually, I still want to go back to the last question, because I think there's
Sorry.
No, that's completely okay. I think there's a really good point in there. So Amy hit it really well with the awareness issue versus the identity crisis within our profession. I think one of the things that sets us apart is how dynamic we're able to be, and the skill set that we're given in, when we have our DPT education and when we graduate. Granted, we're using the term as a generalist where you can go and specialize further, but I think that's a rare but very very powerful trait of our profession, is that we're able to help across a spectrum of a lot of patients. The challenge that I would say, if that question was worded a little differently, is if we focus specifically just on one section. So is there an identity crisis within the orthopedic section? If somebody comes in and they have hip pain, are they going to be treated differently by all 4 of us? And then therefore, does that make it really tough for us to come up with this 5 words, 10 words statement, because we're very heterogeneous in how we address patients still kind of within specific subsets. So I think that's probably the bigger crisis, if you will. We still have even within specific sections, a 10-lane highway instead of 2 or 3 based off of specific patient needs.
And do you think that publication of CPGs helps that? It for people who, and this is going off on a totally other question, I realize that, but following up with that, do you think published CPGs help with that, and staying, I guess, up and current on the literature can help with that? Do you feel like that is something that might close that gap of huge variability?
Yeah, I think the way that they're designed, that's exactly what they're trying to do. Is they're trying to take all of this research literature review that we should all be doing and put it in a really nice, consensus statement for us, and then give us, specific things to look deeper into the CPG. So I think that it's there. It's just, again, is everybody finding that? And if they are finding it, are they applying it properly, towards their practice? So I like that the information's coming out there. I'm at this point, I'm not completely confident that it's reaching throughout, the spectrum of everybody that it should be. But hopefully, it continues, especially as we have new people graduating, we really start to develop that as more of the norm. And then it's a lot easier to not necessarily standardize, but get everyone in a couple of lanes instead of 10 lanes.
So Justin, just to play devil's advocate, what about the good things that come with having 10 lanes versus 2? I think there's some people that I completely am on board with what you're saying, but I think there are plenty of folks that would say, well, that's the beauty of physical therapy, is that it can, you can really make it individualized and what it is to you, and you can treat. Obviously, there's principles that you abide by, but you can be different than the PT next to you, and different to the PT next to them. It can still offer high value. What would you say to somebody who would say that?
I think that your statement you just said is completely fine. But the issue that comes about that is that therapist who wants to provide the individual approach, have they exposed themselves to enough different approaches or different ways that they would look at it, that they can be truly individual to the patient, instead of saying, okay, I'm going to focus on, I am not to throw anyone or anything under the bus here, but I am specifically a Maitland therapist. I am specifically a McKenzie therapist. And then that approach fits that patient all of a sudden, as opposed to being able to expose yourself enough to be able to flow in and out, again, based off of what you said, which is, I completely agree with that individual approach. So making sure that you have that dynamic flexibility to cater your skills. Sorry, a little bit of a tangent there, but can't help myself.
I'll piggyback and put a shout out to people who want to get involved. But one of the things that the orthopedic, the Academy of, I'm going to go back to their old names, the orthopedic section and the sports section in the newer clinical practice guidelines. One of the things that I think JOSBT has done a great job of is kind of forming committees around each guideline on implementation. So when we did the knee and ACL injury prevention clinical practice guideline, we actually had a whole separate committee that we pulled together that was in charge of how do we help disseminate this information and help clinicians implement it. So that was putting together a really short synopsis for clinicians, patient pamphlet, or just like one pager that can be like just printed off and given to clinicians. It was 2 videos. So videos of actually injury prevention programs, one for field-based athletes and one for court-based athletes. But getting those out, just like you talked about, Justin, that's sometimes where that gap between research and clinical practice comes. And that implementation is so important. But it means that, there's a chance to get involved for people who are interested in helping those guidelines really kind of truly get disseminated in the way that they need to be.
Great. And I think that's also really good for the treating clinician, because oftentimes as a treating clinician, we feel like we're so far removed from the researchers and even from the journals that you think, well, what is my contribution going to do? Like, how can I get involved? I'm the J word, just a clinician. And so knowing that these committees exist and that as a treating clinician, you can kind of be part of that if you reach out to get involved, I think is really important, because oftentimes I think clinicians sometimes feel like a little left out sort of and left behind as part of the club, So I think, Amy, thank you so much for bringing that up. And do we want to, does anyone else have any more comments on this specific question, or should we move on to the next one? We're good? Okay, take it away. Next question.
And on that note, we'll take a quick break to hear from our sponsor and be right back. This episode is brought to you by NetHealth. NetHealth's outpatient EMR and billing software Redoc, powered by XFit, provides an all-in-one software solution with guided documentation workflows to make it easy for therapists to use and streamline billing processes to help speed billing and improve reimbursement. You can check out NetHealth's new tip sheet to learn 4 ways that outpatient therapy providers can increase patient engagement in 2020 at go.nethealth.com/patient engagement 2020.
All right. So Amy and Karen, this question is geared towards you guys. So the question reads, while PT is a female-dominated field, there is still a disparity in female leadership. Do you have advice for female student physical therapists who may desire those leadership roles?
I would say, number one, look to the APTA, look to your state organization, look to even where you're working, and try to find a female physical therapist, or even look to social media, right? Look to the wider world that you feel you can model. So I think modeling, especially for women, for people LGBTQ, for people, minorities, is so important. So you want to look for those models, look for the people who are like, hey, this person is kind of like me, so I really feel like I can follow and model this person. I would say look to that first, and then follow that person, see what they're doing, try and emulate some of, not so much of what they're doing in PT, but how they're conducting themselves as a professional. And then, like I said during our talk, reach out. try and find that positive mentor, try and find the mentorship that you are seeking and that you need and that you feel can bring you to the next level, not only as a therapist, but, as a person and as a leader within the physical therapy world. And I think it's very difficult. I'll do a shameless plug for myself here really quick. We created the Women in PT Summit specifically to help women within the profession network, meet some amazing female and male leaders within the profession, and have difficult discussions that need to be had to advance females within the profession. And I will also say to not block out our male counterparts, because they need to be part of the broader conversation, because without that, how can we really expect to move forward if we don't have all the stakeholders at the table? So I would say, speak up, speak out, look at people who are at the top of their game and in high-level positions. Sharon Dunn, Claire Ardern, the editor of JOSPT, Emma Stokes, the head of WCPT. All of these people, if you reach out to them or you hit them up on social media, they will most likely get back to you. It may not be really fast, but they will probably do that. So I would say, look to the broader physical therapy community, look to the world of physical therapy, right down to your individual clinics, because I think that you'll find there are a lot of people to model.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think modeling and mentorship are huge. Finding people that you connect with and who can give you honest, upfront feedback, but also support. So I feel like I'm pretty lucky in both having really strong women who I consider as mentors, but also men, because I think that is important. When I was part of the student assembly, Amy Klein was kind of oversaw the student assembly, and she became someone who I really look up to and admire and will go to for, I know she'll give me it straight. Whether it's, good or bad, I know she'll give it to me straight, and I need that. But then also Joe Black is somebody who's also been a longtime mentor of mine. Recently, Emma Stokes, I've connected with. And that was just meeting her at a conference. And we connected at a conference and had an amazing conversation, and that's developed further too. So I think mentorship and then getting involved, seeking the opportunities, seeking and creating, because sometimes they're not already there. Sometimes you kind of have to create them yourself. Some of those opportunities that you want, going out and saying, hey, can I volunteer here? Where they may not have had volunteers before. So finding those opportunities that you want and that you think will help you develop towards your end goal.
I was just going to say really quick, of course you two have been, great examples of how females can excel and create their own path. The thing about mentors is, with mentors, it's so important to have a variety of mentors, because you're going to pick out different things that mentors are going to help you with. One of my most influential mentors was a female. She was, I was involved with her in the fellowship program that I was in. And she really helped give me some really blunt but helpful feedback that helped a lot with some of my soft skills. So I'm kind of exposing myself a little bit, but she told me that after my lecture, it was on the cervical spine. She's like, yeah, like the content was great. You just weren't likable. And just kind of threw that right at me, let me chew on it a little bit. But that actually really changed how I approached a lot of different things and helped me develop those soft skills. So at the same time, she helped me through some managerial struggles that I was having. So that variety is incredibly important. And I've been a mentor to, some of my mentees were females, and they're doing amazing things right now. And I hope that whatever feedback I gave them, they took the right things from and continue to move forward. So it's an issue that goes across, the gender lines. And as males, I want us to be aware that it's going on as well, and not continue to lead into that discrepancy that Karen described, but still provide that same level of mentorship, same level of opportunity and consideration. So it's a great question, and hopefully the gap narrows as we go forward.
All right. Sorry. I'm in a kind of an old double tree in Orlando, and I think the internet's a little spotty, so cutting in and out a little bit. Okay. Here's another good one. Any recommendations for a PT that is 2 years out and feels completely lost and or in the wrong setting?
Yeah, so I'll start with that one. Of course, understanding that I probably don't have the exact answer here. This really tied into my portion of the talk, which was the importance of the clinical environment within your first couple of years of development. And then also making sure that we clarified the difference between being engaged in your environment, in your system, even in your organization, versus being burnt out, and how those two aren't necessarily exactly the same thing. Burnout is something that we describe as more of like a long-term reaction with like physical manifestations, where engagement is more of deciding how you want to use your remaining effort in the day, the effort that you can discern as, I can do this to go home and watch Netflix, or I can do this to really give back into my system. So I actually had somebody right after the talk come up to me and just say that she really appreciated just hearing it and understanding that there are a lot of people that have that same sense, where your question's coming from. So I just want to put that out there first of all. So I would say first reflect on what you want out of your clinic and see what they are and are not matching. And if you've been in that environment for 2 years, that's a pretty good trial run to figure out if there's a different environment that maybe you would want to consider that's going to work more on engagement. Maybe that you want to be more involved in clinical instruction and be a CI. Maybe you want to do some project management, have some more specific mentorship. Or it's just the way that they're setting up their productivity. So it's a question that I'm glad you're steering into right now. But it's going to take a little bit of reflection, not only on what your expectations are of the clinic and how you see yourself as a therapist, but going even further, keeping your system, your clinic accountable for, are they meeting or at least trying to meet and keep me engaged in those environments? So wish you luck with that reflection.
Nailed it.
Crushed it, man. That was a sick answer, man. That was right on the money. I think the one thing that I would highlight is what I spoke on for those who were there in my portion of the talk, is try to strip it back and think, okay, like what am I about as far as life goes? Like what am I passionate about? What am I into? What gives me energy? And then kind of build yourself back up. Okay, what, as far as work goes, what aligns with that? And then why do I feel a disconnect with where I'm at? And are there ways that I can change my current situation kind of within it? Or do I need to, do I need to move on or do something different? So I would try to use your personal passions and sort of your foundation of who you are as a person to help you kind of reset and try to figure it out. But, I think that's a great question, because we all go through it at some point in time. And the concepts of burnout and, reduced engagement and things, that's all part of the game. And those are completely, but I think burnout obviously isn't a good thing, but that don't feel bad or guilty if and when you run into those things, because we're all humans and they can happen. But know that there are ways that you can move out of that and move past that. And that's one of the cool things about PT is there's so many different things to do and get involved in. But yeah, great question.
That passion was just like the one word that I felt like we needed in that answer. So I think those two are perfect.
So we're good. We hit all the questions.
Probably good.
So I'm going to ask one last question. It's a question that I ask everyone. And Justin, I'll start with you, not to put you on the spot again, but given what you know now in your life and in your career, what advice would you give yourself as a new grad fresh out of Duke?
Yeah, no, that's an awesome question. I think the biggest advice that I would give myself is to not have expectations of quick motion, quick development going through. And in my talk, I talked a little bit about, we were in Denver for CSM, so I talked about using the French fry approach with skis where you go down quickly, or the pizza approach where you go slowly. So making sure that at times I was looking at what I would tell myself now is make sure that you're looking at just that next step and not focusing on the step that's 3 or 4 away. So that you're really present in those moments, because there's a lot of development things that you can potentially miss over as you're trying to really quickly make it to that next step. So take a little bit more of that ski pizza approach. Fabulous.
Daniel, go ahead.
I think what I would say is it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's as far as, career goes and life goes, it's not just, going 110% each and every day. It's being able to look at the long game, also with the short game, kind of along the lines of with what Justin said. Just keeping in mind that it's a marathon, not a sprint. You have to keep the big picture in mind.
Great. All right. And Amy, I'll end with you. And amazingly, I can say the same thing.
Well, you can't end with me because you have to answer it too.
Oh, no, I always answer this. I answer this question already. But anyway, maybe I will. But it's my show. So what advice would you give to yourself fresh out of Duke?
I think for me, it's it would be to give yourself permission. And that I think that extends to a number of different things, but one of the big ones is kind of self-care, kind of giving yourself permission to take that time off, or to let something else be a little bit higher priority, whether that's working out or spending time with people. Kind of giving yourself permission to, take that step back and look at things from that 30,000 foot view, so you can really see that big picture. So I think that would probably be mine.
Excellent. And then I feel like I've answered this question in various iterations over the years, but I really think what I would tell myself, right, knowing what I know now and when I first graduated, which was quite a long time ago, would be from a career standpoint to get more involved, whether that be in the APTA or sections or things like that, because I really wasn't involved. And from a personal standpoint is I needed to calm down, like the Taylor Swift song, I needed to calm down. And that's what I would tell myself. I was always kind of go, 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 go. And I have to do this and I have to do that. And so I would tell myself, calm down. Things will happen, kind of echoing Justin and Dan. I really, that's advice I would give to myself is calm down. You'll be fine. So that's what I would give to myself. So you guys, thank you so much, all of you, for taking the time out and answering all the rest of these questions. I think it'll be really helpful for people who are there and people who weren't to get a little taste of what we spoke about at CSM. And like I said, everybody's social media handles and info will be on the podcast website at podcast.healthywealthysmart.com in the show notes under this episode. So you guys, thank you so, so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Karen.
Yeah, thank you for having us. This was fun.
Thanks, Karen.
Anytime. And everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great couple of days and stay healthy, wealthy, and smart.
Well, a big thank you to Amy, Daniel, and Justin for continuing our conversation and getting everyone's questions answered from our talk at CSM. And of course, thank you to NetHealth. NetHealth's outpatient EMR and billing software Redoc, powered by XFit, provides all-in-one software solution for streamlined billing and documentation workflows. You can check out NetHealth's new tip sheet to learn 4 ways that outpatient therapy providers can increase patient engagement in 2020 at go.nethealth.com/patient engagement 2020.
Thank you for listening, and please subscribe to the podcast at podcast.healthywealthysmart.com. And don't forget to follow us on social media.